Welcome to the Concepts of Print in Early Learning and Childcare training video. This video sits as part of the training videos in the series for taking a developmental approach to emerging literacy across early learning and childcare. In this video we will explore what concepts of print are, why it's important to children's literacy, language and communication development, and how you can plan for children's concepts of print development through developmentally appropriate play experiences where adults and children play and talk together. There are two elements to consider when reflecting on our provision in early learning and childcare. The first is around the quality of our adult-child interactions. Separate to this training are our Words Up Early Interaction Key Messages. The Words Up Early Interaction Key Messages have been developed to support quality adult-child interactions in the home environment and in early learning and childcare settings and schools. The second element that we consider is the quality of our learning environment and how our learning environment supports children's development. Seeing these two elements woven together, we need to reflect how our adult-child interactions support children's development within our learning environment. This slide shows the key components that underpin children's literacy, language and communication development. In focusing on quality adult-child interactions and planning for our learning environment, we can support the development of these emerging literacy key components through developmentally appropriate play experiences. We know that from the research that the more established these key components are, the more benefit children will get from formal instruction of reading and writing in school. Today we are going to focus on one of these key elements, concepts of print. Concepts of print includes using and enjoying stories, mark making, and how to use a book. Concepts of print are important to children's literacy, language and communication development, as children need to have an understanding of and an appreciation of the underlying concepts of print in order to understand and create texts. This video is going to explore two aspects that practitioners in early learning and childcare settings can consider when supporting children's concepts of print development. The first element is going to explore big and small mark making across the setting, both indoors and outdoors. And the second element is going to look at providing and sharing a range of engaging, developmentally appropriate texts. Young children who see writing at home, in the early learning and childcare and school environment, and in the community, will start to understand that writing has many different meanings and purposes. Children begin their journey towards writing by making marks. For the first task, you should make a list of all of the ways that you currently enable the development of children's mark making, both indoors and outdoors. You should now pause the video. In this section of the training, we are going to explore 6 different ways that we can support children's mark making in the early learning and childcare environment. We are going to explore how adults can be role models of writing, how we can create a mark making area with a variety of materials, how we can have mark making materials across the setting, both indoors and outdoors, how we can display children's marks, reflecting on how we provide meaningful reasons to write, and considering how we display print across the environment. In this session, when we make reference to mark making and to writing, we are not referring to handwriting. In the pre-handwriting in early learning and childcare video, you will explore the gross and fine motor skills that underpin children's handwriting development in early learning and childcare. This video has been developed to support early learning and childcare practitioners to reflect on their interactions and their environment to support children's mark making, both indoors and outdoors. We can support children's mark making by being role models of writing. Adults can be role models of writing in the environment. Writing lists, taking a register, and writing observations are examples where adults can be writing role models for children. We can support children's mark making by creating a mark making area with a variety of materials. A mark making area with a range of materials provides children with the opportunity to make marks, recording their thoughts and ideas. Different sized materials can support mark making at different scales, for example, big paintbrushes and small clipboards. Adults play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. In the pictures here, practitioners have provided a range of different materials to make marks and materials to make marks on for children to explore within a designated mark making area. We can support children's mark making by having mark making materials across the setting, both indoors and outdoors. Having mark making materials across the environment, indoors and outdoors, can support children to record thoughts and ideas linked to their interests and the environment. Adults play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. The images on the slide show some examples of how mark-making materials have been placed in the environment to support children's mark-making development, both indoors and outdoors. We can support children's mark making by displaying children's marks. Displaying children's marks across the environment in areas that are visible to them makes a statement of the adult's appreciation of children's marks and provides a concrete example for adults and children to talk about children's mark making. The images show some examples of children's mark making displayed both indoors and outdoors. We can support children's mark making by providing meaningful reasons to write. Through providing purposeful and meaningful reasons to make marks, for example, creating signs and labels, making a list, or developing a story map, children can explore mark making in real-life contexts. Adults play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. The images show examples of children's mark making in both real-life and role-play contexts. We can support children's mark making by having print displayed across the environment. Having print displayed across the environment, for example, handwritten signs, typed labels, logos, and brochures, supports children's print awareness and can be a catalyst for mark making. Adults play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. The images show examples of both handwritten and printed text displayed both indoors and outdoors. The marks and drawings children make act as expressions of their thoughts and ideas. This is a quote that comes from Education Scotland's 2012 publication, Every Day's a Learning Day. Reflecting on the ways in which you can support children's mark-making development, how could you further plan to support children's mark making across the early learning and childcare environment, both indoors and outdoors? You should now pause the video. The story sharing guidance on the screen sits as part of the Early Level Literacy and English Progression Framework. The guidance includes key components for practitioner reflection to support the sharing of stories and books. In this section, we are going to explore 3 of these components: structuring the book area, supporting differentiated sharing of texts, and supporting children's sequence and narrative development. For the next task, you should take some time to explore how the book area in your early learning and childcare setting is designed to engage children in exploring books and stories. You should now pause the video. The book area is an area of the early learning and childcare environment that aims to invite children to explore books and stories. Making it comfortable with cushions, beanbags, and seats can help make the space inviting. In addition to the book area, books should be in different areas across the setting, both indoors and outdoors. In developing the book area, there are some key points for practitioners to consider. Displaying the books with the front cover showing and at the children's eye level allows easy access to the texts. Providing a small selection of books which link to the children's interests allows for opportunities for adults and children to play and talk together to support children's knowledge, understanding, and language development. Limiting the number of books can support children in making choices about the book or books that they wish to explore. Including a range of developmentally appropriate texts, such as touch and feel books and lift the flap books, can support children's tactile exploration of books and provide opportunities for adults and children to play and talk together. Providing a selection of books, including stories, poetry, rhyming books, number books, information books, reference books, fiction and non-fiction, can support children to explore the different features within texts when adults and children play and talk together. Ensuring that the books provided are of quality can support children's language learning when adults and children play and talk together through exploring texts. These quality books can support children's phonological awareness and language development when adults and children play and talk together when sharing texts. In the book area, practitioners can change books regularly, apart from the favourite books that the children have identified. This may include adding books that are relevant to current topical interests, for example, during autumn, having books on autumn. Providing books which reflect and promote equality and diversity allows for practitioners and children to explore texts and themes to support children's health and well-being development. Providing resources such as puppets and props can support children's retell of texts and their creation of their own stories. Reflecting on the key points to consider, what adaptations could be made to the book area in your early learning and childcare setting to support children's exploration of books and stories? You should now pause the video. By providing a range of developmentally appropriate texts, for example, touch and feel books, lift the flap books, and quality picture books, practitioners, when playing and talking together with children, can support differentiated book and story sharing. Through engaging with developmentally appropriate texts and using the information from the preschool developmental overview, instead of a story or book shared with all of the children in the setting, practitioners can differentiate the story or book sharing for small groups and individuals based on children's listening and attention skills, their understanding of language, and their interests. Linked to the Words Up Early interaction key messages, which sit separate to this training, there are some key points which practitioners can consider when sharing books with small groups. Quiet time to talk, so children can hear the words. We can do this by reducing distractions, turning off background noise, and choosing a quiet time of the day or area. Face to face so that the children can see your face. We can do this by sitting at the children's level and the group sitting in a circle or semicircle. Pause and wait so that the children can take a turn. We can do this by counting up to 10 and waiting for children to take their turn. See what they do with the book and let them take the lead. Responding to their turn and following their lead. It's okay just to talk about the pictures and not read a book word for word. Repeat, 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 so the children can learn language and storytelling skills. We can do this by ensuring that we know the story before sharing it, so that we can read it without having to read it word for word from the book, so that we can interact with the children. It is recommended that we share the book at least 3 times in the week and let the children explore the story through their play. Be careful with questions so that the children can learn language. We can do this by naming and describing what is happening in the pictures in the book. Use visuals such as pictures and objects such as props to help the vocabulary come alive for the children. Remember to pause and wait after commenting so that the children can take a turn. Try to avoid using testing questions. For example, what's that? What colour is it? How many ducks are there? For the next task, you should consider how you could further plan to support differentiation of story and book sharing linked to children's stages of development and their interests. You should now pause the video. In the final section, we are going to consider how we can support children's narrative skills through sharing books and stories. For this task, you should consider how, as a setting, you currently use stories and books to support children to retell and to create texts. You should now pause the video. When sharing stories, adults can comment on the narrative concepts of who, where, when, and what happened within a text. This supports children's understanding of a text and their creation of their own texts. Some examples of adults commenting on the narrative concepts may be, "Look who this is! It's the big, bad wolf. Look where Little Red Riding Hood is. She's in the woods." Through commenting, adults can model the who, where, when, and what happened concepts when sharing a story. Props linked to familiar texts can be placed in the environment to enable children to retell or imitate the text, as well as using props as an aid to adapt or innovate the who, where, when, or what happened in the text to make a text of their own. Adults can play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. A story map is a visual map that can be used to retell a story or create a new text. To support the retelling or creation of texts, children can use visuals or props. Adults play and talk together with children to support their development where appropriate. The images on the screen show how children have used props to retell the story. The children have created a story map using these props. When retelling stories a number of times throughout the week, adults may also use gestures or actions to help support the retelling of a story. For the final task, you should consider how you could further support children's narrative skills through using books, stories, and props to retell and create texts. You should now pause the video. You have now reached the end of the Concepts of Print in Early Learning and Childcare training video.